policies. Lai Ching-te is a troublemaker. I don't think he's going to attack because, as we've just been discussing, that the cost of doing so is huge. I think that that's been a little bit misunderstood. Not possible.
下班国际线小路带你看世界。2025呢是全球秩序变化非常重要的一年。我们看到今年10月，川普跟习近平的会面再度登场，双方也敲定明年4月川普要访华。究竟美中台的关系未来会如何走呢？台湾又应该如何面对未来的中美关系？今天为你介绍我身边的嘉宾，他是美国哥伦比亚大学教授、政治系的教授黎安友。
谢谢，很高兴跟你交流。
It's such an honor to have you here, Professor.
谢谢。
You've spent decades studying China's politics. Not only that, but also its ability to adapt, its durability. Before we turn to current events, I'd like to start with something fundamental. I feel that when we talk about, or people around the world talk about China, our discussion often driven by headlines, personalities, or sometimes moments of crisis. But a long-term point of view, what do you think, what do most people still misunderstand about how power actually works in China?
Well, I think there's a couple of things we misunderstand, but probably one of them is we see that power in China is very centralized. Xi Jinping has a great deal of power, but we understand less how complicated the country is. The bureaucracy is huge. It has many different levels. It's hard for Xi Jinping to get the same performance out of every unit, every enterprise, every local government unit. And also that the Chinese people's attitude toward the regime is not the same either. Most Chinese people are trying to make their own life. Some are middle class, some are very wealthy, some are poor, some are farmers, and so on. And so there's quite a diversity of opinion. So China's more complicated than we know. And Xi Jinping has been cracking down on foreign research. So it's harder and harder for us to really understand how the system works and what public opinion is. When I started studying China, we were basically interviewing refugees who came out into Hong Kong and Macau. And now we're kind of getting back to that problem where it's hard for my students to do field work in China to really understand the grassroots.
So how do you conduct your research these days? I'm very curious about this.
Well, my research mostly has been two things. One is Chinese foreign policy. For recent years, I've worked on that. And foreign policy has the characteristic that it happens in the world, so you can see what they're doing. You don't know what their thinking is exactly, but you could see their behavior. The other one is, for a long time, I've been a member of a project which is based here in Taiwan called the Asian Barometer Survey. Used to be run by Professor Zhu Yunhan, who was a Yuan Shi. He was a famous political scientist here, but unfortunately he died a couple of years ago. So now it's being run by a Taida professor named Huang Minhua. So it's a very important international survey research project. But we've done, I think, 5 waves of surveys in mainland China, but I'm not sure we can do it again now under the current conditions because China has a rule against letting internal data be shared outside of China. So it's hard to get survey data from China right now. I hope that situation will change in the future.
Why do you think that space for research has been tightened?
Well, maybe that's the other thing about what we misunderstand about China. My view has been for a long time is that China's policies are animated by a sense of vulnerability. This is hard to believe. China's such a strong country. They're so rich. They have the biggest navy in the world. They seem to have a very stable political system. But the regime seems to be afraid of both Jingwei and Jingnei. They're afraid, Jingwei, especially of the United States. There's a long history of the United States being antagonistic to the rise of China. And now the United States has this 中国威胁论, we are afraid of the so-called China threat, and we want to prevent that. So looking from China's point of view, the Americans are hostile to China's interests. And then in terms of Jingmei, they don't trust the students, the intellectuals, the private entrepreneurs, and even their own bureaucracy. The leaders don't entirely trust. So, we had the white paper movement, Baizhi Yundong, yes, after the COVID lockdown. And in 1989, we had the Tiananmen pro-democracy movement. So the leaders think, the people may oppose us at any time, or this section or that section of the population is not loyal. So the regime appears to feel very insecure. And that's why they're behaving so, sort of hardline internationally, and so cracking down so much domestically.
Okay, let's talk about this sense of insecurity. More than a decade ago, you published China Seeking Security, saying it's no doubt a major power, nevertheless feels deeply insecure. And today, you said that sense of security still exists.
Yeah.
What do you think it's primarily about?
Well, historically, when the Communist Party took over China, the United States was hostile to it. We had the Korean War. We had the United States signed a defense treaty with Taiwan. We supported the Kuomintang. For the long time, the Kuomintang had this Guangfu Dalu policy that, they were going to knock over the communists. Even when Nixon visited China and signed the Shanghai Communique, and he said that we're not going to interfere with Haixia Liang'an, whatever they want to resolve the Taiwan problem and stuff like that. American presidents would come home and explain to the American public, China's going to change. China's going to become like us. China's going to become a democracy. Well, if you're the leader of the Chinese Communist Party and the American president says China's going to be a democracy, it means you're going to lose power. It means you're not going to be a communist party anymore.
Yeah.
So the U.S. is not really friendly to. So American presidents have tried to hew out a path that says we have common interests with China, but really the Chinese don't see the U.S. as having common interests with them. It's either the U.S. is the Batran in Asia, or we get the U.S. out of our way, and we have, as they view, national security. They wouldn't say China wants hegemonic power in Asia, but of course they're surrounded by other countries, and they want those other countries to be deferential to Chinese interests. The United States is supporting Japan. The United States, for many decades, has said to Japan, what will you do to help us, the U.S., protect Taiwan? That's adverse to the interests of the Chinese leadership. So, and then I think they're also insecure because their legitimacy at home depends on economic growth, and they've been very successful with economic growth for a long time. But it's always difficult, and the growth is slowing down, and there's all the problems we know about, the real estate crisis and the youth unemployment and all these kind of problems, and so they have a hard time satisfying the demands of the Chinese population.
So you're saying there are a lot of reasons.
There are reasons why they feel insecure.
But right now, in 2025, this year is frequently described a year of shifts in global order, global power, with this renewed engagement between U.S. and China, and also new leadership in Washington. What do you think this all gonna pay out for U.S.-China-Taiwan relations?
I think the up and down of engagement, where Trump is angry at China and he puts tariffs, and he meets with Xi Jinping and he lowers the tariff. These are very 表面, very superficial changes. I think the fundamental structure that we see is that the relative power balance is changing. The US is still a very powerful country, a very big market, but China's rising and the relationship is more equal. So the Biden administration defined, actually, if you go back to Obama said, we got to pay attention to the rise of China. We have to pivot to Asia. We have to pay more attention to defending our inherited position in Asia. The United States, after World War II, inherited a very powerful position in Asia. We had our South Korean ally, Japanese ally, Philippine ally in Taiwan, and basically surrounding China and the dominant power. But then as China rises, they're not comfortable with being number two to the United States in their own region. So that threatens. So I think this conflict, or what Biden described as strategic competition, meaning we don't want a conflict, we don't want a war, it's a competition, but it's not an ordinary competition, it's strategic in significance. Either we're going to be dominant or you're going to be dominant without war. So this is the underlying long-term structure. It is a rising power versus an incumbent power. It's both sides are unhappy. I don't see any kind of win-win sort of peaceful. I mean, well, peaceful, okay, not going to be a war necessarily, but I just don't see
China.
Yeah, but I don't think the two sides are going to have a sort of compromise where both are satisfied.
Can you please summarize what has truly changed and what, despite all the attentions, remain largely the same?
Since when? You mean?
Trump.
Well, I mean, so
this term.
Oh, this term. Okay. So when Trump, again, going back to Obama, he wanted to pivot to Asia, the rise of China, we have to pay more attention to Asia, but followed by Trump 1.0. And I think Trump 1.0 made a fundamental change in American strategy by defining China really as an enemy.
Yeah.
And so when Biden came back, he basically kept that approach toward China, but used the term I just mentioned, strategic competition, with the idea is, okay, you're our main threat and we want to maintain our superiority over you, but without war.
Yeah.
Now, Trump comes back in, and what is very strange now with Trump is that since he's mainly interested in money and he believes in prosperity and that anybody who can earn money is going to be satisfied, which is wrong about China, because China is about...
Our sentiment's different.
Well, China is all about regime security and national security and, as you said, what my book titled, China's Search for Security. But Trump now seems to be emphasizing, let's do business. I want to do business with you and you can do business with me and you can buy soybeans and you can invest here and I can invest in China.
Transactional.
Transactional. Now you ask about what are the implications of that for Taiwan.
Yes.
And I fear that the implications of that for Taiwan is that American support for Taiwan, which is still there now, is unreliable. You know, I know that in Taiwan there is a thought called Ime Lun, you know, which is always there. But now Trump is giving more reasons to think that he could, at any time, be very happy with some deal with Xi Jinping and then say, well, then Taiwan's not so important. And there's always been people in the United States arguing that, number one, is that to defend Taiwan is too difficult for us. We're far away. China's nearby. China has a big navy. Our navy is, you know, smaller than the Chinese navy, even though it's technologically more advanced.
Oh.
And that, so recently, there's always articles and books saying we have to sort of joyen daju, you know, we have to pay attention to the big picture, which is getting along with China. not to have a war, but to find a way to live with China. This, by the way, this is not my position. I'm describing, a line of thinking in the United States.
And also we can see that sort of voices happen right now here in Taiwan as well.
Yeah. Well, the voices in Taiwan are that the United States support is unreliable, and we have to figure out how to survive in that situation one way or another. And in the United States, the idea is that Taiwan's important. We love Taiwan. We love democracy and everything, but that the United States can also maintain its core national interests without Taiwan. So I'm thinking in particular of an essay written by a guy named Michael Swain in the Quincy Institute. He's one of this stream of thought. So, I mean, but my own view, if you want to know, is that that if China does get control of Taiwan, it's a very serious blow to American interests. It is a core interest. I don't think the United States has to control everything in Taiwan, but I think the United States' core national interest is to prevent China from getting control over Taiwan. That's my view.
Yeah.
But I'm saying in the United States, there is also stream of thought that questions that position.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because these days we can hear many said that a peaceful approach to Taiwan issue aligned with America's best interests. I'm not sure how I feel about this statement, and in the sense that peace in Taiwan is surrounded by layers of conditions, and it's just very hard to come to consensus. I guess I would love to ask, when policymakers talk about America's national interest in 2025, what do they mean? What are they prioritizing?
So it's so hard to talk about American policymakers because there's so many of them, and they all have various views. So, for example, Secretary of the Treasury Bessent and Secretary of Commerce Lutnick are all about the tremendous prospects of trade and business with China and with Russia. But then so far, and then Trump has said a lot of things as well about, he didn't let President Lai Ching-te visit, the United States on a transit, and he met with Xi Jinping in South Korea and said, we had a great meeting, and Xi Jinping and I got along, and we're the G2 and stuff like that. So we don't know what, and Rubio, the Secretary of State, is a hardliner on China. And the Congress is very strong, basically strongly anti-China. So you have all these different voices. In the end, though, the way the Trump presidency works is that Trump will decide. He doesn't really, other people talk to him, but he sort of makes up his own mind, and he doesn't seem to be he's not a very deliberative individual. So we don't know what, now I've lost the track of your question exactly, but I mean, there are all these policymakers. In the end, it's going to be Trump, and we don't know which way he's going to go on Taiwan.
Do you think a peaceful approach to Taiwan issue align with America's best interests?
So the approach I think that aligns with America's interests, which you could say peaceful, is deterrence. To deter Xi Jinping from launching an attack or a blockade. And how to deter that has several different parts. One is the military part. You have to have a credible military response if Xi Jinping attacks. And that breaks down into the Taiwan military response and the American military. But the other important part of it is deterrence through reassurance. You have to reassure Xi Jinping that if he doesn't attack, the Taiwan situation is not going to get worse as he views it, not going to get more toward independence. He's not going to lose the amount of influence that he already has. He's not going to lose the ultimate hope of getting control over Taiwan. So deterrence is a search for peace, and it includes credible threat and credible assurance.
Yeah, it's a multi-dimension.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you said a lot of things is up to Trump.
Yeah.
Because you noted that right now, these days, decision-making in China has become more and more personalized and centralized, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would say many observers would argue also the decision-making process in Washington right now is also personalized and centralized.
Right.
So my question is, when both sides operate under highly personalized leadership, what does that mean for Taiwan?
Well, I think there are two different forms of personalized leadership.
Wow.
Now, we don't know that much about what goes on in Zhongnanhai, but what I think is happening in Zhongnanhai is that Xi Jinping has a orderly process of information gathering. I think he gets good information. How prepared is the military? What is America doing in Taipei? What's going on in Japanese politics, and so on and so forth. He gets the information. He has his think tank people. He has his advisors in the government. He also listens to the academic think tank people in China. So he's got an orderly decision process, which ends up with him taking responsibility. Okay. And when he takes responsibility, it looks like he has the support of his inner circle of power holders. Now, the personalized process in Washington is very chaotic. Somebody gets into Trump's office, Laura Loomer, anybody from the outside, and tells them, you don't trust this guy, that person's not loyal. And then somebody else comes in and says, we got to do this. And Trump is tired, and he goes and writes some of his social media, and then he gets up in the morning and Xi Jinping said something nice to Trump, then Trump is like, oh, the guy likes me, so I'm going to be okay with him. Or, it's very emotional, it's unsystematic, and it's short-termism. Also, Trump doesn't think about, if I do this, what's the other guy going to do? I'm going to put tariffs on you, that's all I know. Oh, you can also put tariffs on me. God, I never thought about that. He doesn't think about number 2 step. So it's two different. So their power is centralized, but the process is very different.
I've heard Trump will take whoever gave the last option to
That's
him
what
in
I've
the meeting.
heard as well.
That he will say, okay, let's do that.
So you have this influencer, Laura Loomer.
Yeah.
And she gets into Trump's office and she says, you can't trust, Alex Wang, who's one of the National Security Council China experts. So Trump says, fine, fire the guy. And he's out.
And it's done.
And you lose the expert. Who are their experts?
I see the difference, but they're going to meet up next April.
Yeah.
What do you think they will talk about?
Oh, well, I think they'll talk about all the problems. I mean, Trump will go in there with his agenda, which probably is about...
Is it fluid?
Huh?
His agenda, is it fluid?
It's got to be updated to the circumstances of April, but he's going to have his concerns about the trade deficit and the supply chain and all those kind of things, and the American investment opportunities. And I wouldn't be surprised if Trump didn't also have some demands for his family business.
In China?
In China. I don't know this, but he likes to have the family business and the national business. Xi Jinping is going to have his agenda items. And Xi Jinping's agenda items are likely to be, Taiwan will be one of the important ones. And I do worry that, because American Taiwan policy is quite nuanced and complicated. It's that we do not support and do not oppose Taiwan independence, and we do oppose any unilateral change and in the situation.
This is very complicated.
We could accept any peaceful resolution. Has to be. This is too complicated for Trump to really remember. So I think if Xi Jinping says to something like this, and I'm just making this up, it's my speculation. If Xi Jinping says to Trump, we are China, we're peaceful, we have 3,000 years of very peaceful. You are also a man of peace. You deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. Our two countries should not have war. Taiwan is making trouble between our countries. Lai Ching-te is a troublemaker. The post-war international arrangement, the San Francisco Treaty, gave Taiwan to China. Your advisors are not telling you the truth, and blah, 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 like this.
Person Trump would not have the ability
Trump
to differentiate.
He doesn't know, and if he likes Xi Jinping, so there's got to be a certain, Xi Jinping has to treat him very well, treat him with respect, give him the very best banquet, and show him the best, whatever. And last time Trump was in China, he was so impressed. It's so beautiful.
In Beijing.
There's so much red. There's so much gold.
Yeah. I saw that in the footage.
This guy, Xi Jinping, is such a boss. Everybody is obeying Xi Jinping like crazy. People don't even treat me, So if Trump is in a very good mood and feels very supported by Xi Jinping, he's going to believe Xi Jinping more than he believes
in Taiwan,
his own CIA. Like when he met with Putin. And he says, Putin told me that he didn't interfere with the election, and I believe Putin. Remember that? So Trump didn't believe his own CIA. The CIA told him Putin is interfering in our election. And Trump said, Putin said he's not interfering. Who do I believe? Putin looked me right in the eye and told me it's okay. So I do fear that when Trump goes to Beijing, that he might carelessly, sort of give away the long-standing, very nuanced American policy on Taiwan. Of course, he can come back and change his mind after that. He's not reliable, but that would still be very damaging.
So you're saying it's highly possible that during this meeting,
you can tell I'm not a big supporter of Trump, so so I think it is possible.
But he has a whole administration, the whole government to, help him to return to the right direction.
It could be when if this happens and he comes back, then.
Yeah.
But again, the government is divided under him. There'll be a big uproar if he does something like that. The media, the Congress. I think that basically the anti-China, pro-Taiwan, let's put it this way, the anti-China sentiment is very deep-rooted in the United States. And that means fewer people know about Taiwan, more people know about China. But the idea that China is, not respecting us and is trying to replace us and remake the international order, that's a very widespread idea in the United States.
If Americans are anti-China, doesn't that mean they're more aware of what's going on here in Taiwan? Or
I think it means it does mean that they're more supportive of Taiwan, but when you say more aware, we have to remember that a lot of American people don't know much about international affairs. They know China. That's a big thing. But then they may not really quite understand what is Taiwan. But then when you bring that to the level of, say, the Congress, congressional staff, and stuff like that, then of course they do know what is Taiwan.
Okay. Look forward. We're still talking about President Xi. He's not preparing to have a successor. What do you think, beyond maintaining his power, what do you think the one most important thing he has to achieve in his lifetime?
I think so is it Taiwan or is it Xiaokang Shehui? I think this is the question.
Yes.
I mean, both of those have been put up as goals for Xi Jinping to achieve. I think and I hope that it's true that he would not sacrifice the Xiaokang Shehui for fighting a war over Taiwan. I don't like Trump, but I do respect Xi Jinping. I'm not a big fan of Xi Jinping's dictatorship, but I think he's a very competent leader. So if he is a competent leader, then he understands that he needs to be patient about the Taiwan issue. China does need to control Taiwan in order to feel comfortable with their national security.
Yes.
But if they move too soon, when they're not ready, they will pay a huge cost. And I think he understands that. And therefore, I hope that he will be patient. And I think that's the case, because he will prioritize
the economic,
domestic security, domestic economic prosperity, and so forth.
Because there has been intense discussion about 2027. It's a possible timeline for a military invasion against Taiwan. Do you think it is a distraction, or it's actually possible?
Not possible.
Not possible.
No. I think that that's been a little bit misunderstood. So that's information that came out from American intelligence.
Yes.
And the detail was that Xi Jinping told the military not to attack in 2027, but to be ready in 2027, so that he could give the order in 2028 or 2030 or 2035 that they should be ready by 2027. But now he's purged so many of these generals, which to me sends the message that they aren't ready. They won't be ready
by 2027.
By 2027. But even if they are ready, I don't think he's going to attack, because as we've just been discussing, that the cost of doing so is huge.
Thank you so much, Professor. 今天呢，我们深入探讨了川普第2任期，还有川习会之后美中台的3边的关系。那今天非常特别谢谢教授的时间，我们持续的要帮大家在这个节目当中分析接下来的1年世界的局势将怎么样变化。今天因为时间的关系，我们节目就到这边告一段落。Thank you so much again.
You're very welcome. 谢谢。
谢谢，我们下次再见，大家拜拜。